Okay, we're gonna try this again. Bear with me.
Okay.
Yay!
Yeah, okay. Perfect. Okay.
Oh my goodness. Me and technology, let me tell you, we're not friends.
Apparently me neither, so it's okay.
It is all good, but we made it here. This is a special Instagram Live for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Um, and we're going to talk about something that so many people face but rarely get a chance to discuss openly. So we're going to open up that can of worms, um, and really like talk about how a parent's love can be um, a barrier for leaving an abusive relationship. Like they're looking out for their kids, they're looking out for their safety and normalcy, but what is really kind of happening on the behind the scenes stuff. So we want to explore that, the children factor.
Hmm.
Um, and we to really, I don't have any children, but I know this is a huge issue. I have pets. That's
Hmm.
also another barrier, but we don't have to educate the pets, right?
Right.
We get to school them. We don't have ongoing education for them.
Absolutely.
um, but we want to talk about, um, to anyone out there that's listening, you're not alone. um, that there are resources, and we want to be able to dive into all that. And of course, having you here and your story, I want to ask a little bit about that. You don't have to, whatever is comfortable for you. Um, but talk about a little bit about your story. You're a survivor. And now you're a child educator, right? With Achieve Now and doing these amazing things for homeschooling and all of that great stuff. So I want to introduce you, the CEO and founder of Achieve Now, Jakira Leonard.
Yes.
And I want to give you the table to tell just a little bit about your story. Again, whatever you're comfortable with. You can dive deep, you can stay surface, whatever you're comfortable with.
Absolutely. So thank you, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me on. This is super exciting. I am somebody that will shout my story to the rooftop, to the window, because I want to be able to be a person that I want people to look at me and say, hey, if she got through it and she's still alive and was able to survive it and change her life around, that I can do that as well. So, a little bit about my story. So, yes, I was involved in a domestic violence situation. It was terrible. It was absolutely bad. I did not think that I was going to make it out. It was so gruesome at some points. The PTSD of it still does affect me a little bit. Um, and I watch myself, and even sometimes now I have to catch myself and say, hey, you're safe. I have to remind myself, Jakari, you're safe. You're not in that anymore. And that happened 4 years ago. So to anybody out there that maybe, hey, it's been 6 years and I'm still, listen, that's normal. It's normal.
Yeah.
Because that was a painful and traumatic situation that you went through. And for me, specifically, again, it was traumatic. Broken bones,
Mm.
dislocated bones, stalking. I had water thrown on me. Anything you could think of, like that can happen in a relationship, abusive relationship, it happened to me. I remember sitting in my apartment at the time. I was living in Connecticut. I remember sitting in my apartment and I was in my room and I was boohoo crying because I was like, God, if you don't get me out of this, I'm going to die. Like, I am going to die. Like,
Yeah.
I just accepted I was like, this is it. Like, I'm going to die. And he got me out of it. And I actually left Connecticut running. So I was fortunate again to get out of that situation. And years down the line, I still had to deal with the PTSD. I tried to heal myself in a sense. Didn't work. Until I really started facing those learned behaviors in
Yeah.
me that I had adapted and picked up along the way.
And you can
I started,
really only heal yourself to a point,
yeah,
right? Like there's a barrier there too.
absolutely, absolutely. You need therapy. You need that extra help. You need friends. You need a healthy community
Yep.
to help you walk through that process. And you need patience and grace
Yeah.
because it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in a year. I mean, to some people it may. For me
Yeah.
it didn't. It did not. I dealt with PTSD for a very long time. Even now,
Yeah.
I again, like I said earlier, I catch myself sometimes. You're safe, you know? And
Yeah.
that situation, actually, the PTSD from that situation, when other things would happen in my life, it would make it so extreme, the PTSD stemming from that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was pretty bad, but I was able and I was fortunate because everyone's not that fortunate, but I was fortunate enough to get out of that situation alive and be able to. I made a lot of mistakes, but seeing where I'm at now and my growth and being a domestic violence advocate and helping children and helping families that may be in those situations,
Yeah.
it's a win is a win, as they say on TikTok. A win is a win, you know? So,
Exactly. It doesn't matter that it's this big or this
right.
big, right? It's you're taking a baby step in a new direction, and progress is progress. It
Yep.
doesn't matter tiny step, giant leap. It's still you're headed in the right direction,
Yep.
and you can heal going that way
Mhm.
where you can't heal going backwards.
Right. Correct.
That's amazing.
Listen, I think about it sometimes. I try not to go so deep into it with the emotions, but I think about it sometimes and just see how far I've come, and how certain things that used to bother me don't bother me anymore. Um, I believe that I'm on a better track, even in relationships. I believe that I'm getting better every day. I don't know everything and I still mess up, but I believe that I'm getting better every day,
Yeah.
even in education, because that situation, I dropped out of school. So I was able to get back into school, finishing up everything that I need right now, and I'm pushing forward. And
So what made you go from like surviving, right? Because at that point you're surviving when you escape. You're a survivor, but you're still in the mentality of surviving. What made you go into the arena of education and helping children?
um, I've always worked with children.
Okay.
Since graduating high school, even in high school, I've always worked with children. My dad's a pastor, so at his church in Bridgeport, I was one of the youth leaders. I've always worked with children.
Okay.
It's so funny because I used to say, I'm never going to have kids. I don't want, it's going to be the rich auntie. I'm still going to be the rich, still that. But I was just always, kids always adapt to me. And then as I've gotten older, and as I've exited out of that situation, I saw that there was a need, especially for women, um, and children, young girls, not to fall into those situations. So how can I help? How can I help? I've I've always had like a part-time job of tutoring. I've always had that. Like
Hmm.
I don't care what else I was doing. I've always had like a part-time job of tutoring.
That's
So I was like, why can I, implement tutoring education along with being an advocate? Like who says I
yeah.
can't do that? I can do that, you know?
Amen.
Yeah.
Right. It's figuring out how,
Yeah.
and who do you need to meet to make that happen, right?
Right.
It's just finding out that puzzle piece to put it
Yeah.
together. Um, let's start about kind of the inner conflict that parents face, or especially because we're women and we're talking about women surviving. We all know that men deal with this too.
hmm
Um, especially on the psychological side of it, it's can be very traumatic, no
hmm
matter what sex you are. Um, but studies show 50 to 60% of people experiencing domestic abuse stay longer for the sake of their
Mm-hmm.
children, right? So imagine that mother who wants to leave but fears that there's going to be huge disruption.
Mm-hmm.
So new school, new friends, a new environment, and that's overwhelming. So us surviving and escaping is already overwhelming. The children also experience that. So do pets. Everyone who's leaving and getting out of that toxic environment is going to be changing.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you feel are some of the toughest emotional challenges that parents face when they decide to leave, but fear of disrupting their child's life steps in?
Um, it, there's a list. And from my experience and what I've seen, the list is very long. One of the number one things is finances. So if I pull my child out of this school, and let's say the mom is in a situation where her abuser has isolated her from family, she's not working, doesn't have her own income, and her child is going to one of the top schools. I pull my child out of the school, or even if I want to keep my child in the school and my abuser chooses not to pay for it anymore, how am I going to provide? How am I going to pay that bill? Or if I pull my child out of the school, I risk my child not being able to get the education that they need to be able to succeed in life and to succeed and achieve their
Or,
goals.
or even the abuser tracking the
Mhm.
mom down through the child still going to the
Yep,
school,
absolutely.
right?
And
All the crazy scenarios.
oh yeah, absolutely. And there are so many laws that if especially if mom and the abuser are married and they're getting a divorce and it has been proven through court that dad is the father of those, if that child or those children, there are laws that are in place that, hey, the abuser dad has, or whoever, which because it can go either way,
Yep.
whoever has the rights to come to that school and get their child. And because people are so creative and manipulative, they can figure out a way to, hey, where's mommy staying, or
Or
where's
slide
daddy?
that Apple tracker,
Exactly.
as that
Exactly.
happens a
Yeah.
lot, into a backpack, into a shoe, into whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's that's so sad because, as a parent, and I don't know that feeling, but I have many friends who are parents, and all you want for your child is safety and stability,
Mm-hmm.
right? But in this case, safety and stability are not on the same playing field. It's like that the balance of, do you go for safety of, the 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 safety of the child or the mental side of the safety, or do you go for the stability?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times they're two separate things. They're not, an abusive situation, they're not in the same arena,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that, again, when you're in that situation and you're thinking about what's best for, I want my child to have this, and I'm a mom, so I'm always thinking of how can I want my child to have stability. Like that's the number one thing that I want. I don't care about anything.
Yeah.
I want my child to have stability. So how can I provide that? And I have the necessary means to do that. However, a mom or a dad that's in an abusive situation that can't, what do they do? Where do
Yeah.
they even start? Let's, again, one of the top things a abuser does is they isolate them. They get to them to where that you need me. Like you have to need me.
Yep.
Like you can't need anyone else. You can't lean on this person. You can't even have friends. You can't even be associated with family sometimes. Um, like you need me, and I'm the only person. Let me be the
Yeah.
sole center of your life. And
So that's interesting because that becomes the normal,
mm-hmm,
right? The abuser's creating that
mm-hmm,
normal, and
right,
that becomes that normalcy. What we would think is normal is no longer normal, it's harmful,
right,
right?
mm-hmm,
So that's the two sides of that coin of normalcy. Of, you want it to be normal, but staying there to keep it normal is actually more harmful
More harmful.
because
Yep.
the
Absolutely.
kid sees everything.
Yep. Yep. And they see everything and then they think that it's normal. So that's why you see a lot of children go to school and they're fighting and they're talking down to their teachers or disrespecting their teachers, disrespecting their peers, picking on people. That's where we see a lot of bullies. And
Yeah,
people don't realize that. That's where we see a lot of bullies. It's not just because, oh, they don't have a lot of money, so they're picking it. No, there's some type of abuse. There's some level of abuse that's going on.
yeah,
Wouldn't say that for all of the time, but majority of the time, there's some level of abuse, and they're seeing that and they're thinking that it's normal. So they're learning these behaviors, and then when they get in school, they're it's affecting the classroom. It's affecting the teachers, and now you have teachers that now we have a teacher shortage. That's why.
yeah. It
And so
becomes a tornado,
yeah.
right? It's not just the child that's being affected.
Mm-hmm.
It is, well, it's the parent, then the child sees it, and then everyone in that circle. So the surrounding children, the teachers, the school system, the friend, everyone gets impacted.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's like a domino effect in a sense.
Yeah.
Like,
And
thing
they
happens.
say statistics, they say that 15.5 million children in the United States are exposed to domestic violence annually.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
insane.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely insane.
You'd be surprised. You would literally be surprised as to how many people, even with what I do, you can, and because I've been in that situation, you can instantly pick it up.
Yeah.
You see the cues. You see whether it be mom or dad. You see the cues.
Now, let's dive into that just a little bit deeper. So, as an educator,
Mm-hmm.
and you are seeing the situation, I mean, I know what I see, right? But I don't have children. I'm not in school system environment. So I'm going to ask you,
Mm-hmm.
um, what do you see when dad's dropping off the child, the mom's dropping off the child, or both parents are dropping off the child? What are those cues that you witness that everyone needs to know to look out for?
Some of the cues that I witness, especially in the years that I have, even being a school teacher, public school and private school, um, you'll either, it's like a two-way street with kids. You'll either have a child that's like super ready to leave their parents because like, hey, I need a break from this, I need to get away from this, or you'll have a child that is, um, I kind of want to stay close to them. Let's say if you have both parents dropping them off and the child's like, I don't want to leave mommy, like, and they're looking, you see that fear on their face. It's like, because most of the time children tend, in situations like that, they tend to say, I'm a protector. They take on that role of I'm mommy or daddy's protector. So
Yeah.
leaving the parent that is being abused is kind of like, I don't want to do that because what happens if I'm not there?
They want to be the safety blanket.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Do you see a difference in the way maybe the parents talk to the children, or how they're verbally directing the children, or is it mainly like the body language?
I would say it's a mixture of both.
Okay.
You'll have sometimes children are coached into saying things. Um, some households were raised, I know specifically in my culture, in the in the African American community, um, one of the things we were raised growing up, uh, what goes on in this house stays in this house.
Zip it up.
Right.
Yeah.
So you don't say anything. And a lot of abusers take that and use it to their advantage. So let's say if a child is being questioned by a teacher and the parent is there or the abuser is there, you will see the cues of them looking at the abuser and like, can I answer this? Can I, or
Mm,
what's going to happen if I answer this?
hmm
They may start rubbing their fingers or fiddling with things. And it's kind of like you're paying attention, watching them, to see where they're basically what they're doing. And those are the cues. And you see specifically, it's kind of like, okay, this child is a little bit nervous when this parent comes around, but when this parent comes around, they're just more relaxed, more calm.
Hmm.
And again, you pick up the cues, and you have to be careful because sometimes it's just an innocent situation of where dad is more stern than
Yeah.
mom, or mom is more stern than dad.
Yeah.
But you can always tell. You can always, and again, I believe because of my experience in this field, along with me being in that
Yeah.
situation, you're able to pick up the cues instantly.
You s- you see it. Like
Hmm.
I know, and I don't know your situation, but I always felt like as soon as I was getting, you know, disciplined,
Hmm.
is the word to use, I would shrink,
Yeah.
right? So you kind of shrink into yourself of, you know, it's that protective mode. You go up into that shell,
Hmm.
and I can imagine a child kind of doing the same thing of just kind of like shrinking down or blossoming up depending on the parent that's
Hmm.
there if there's abuse in that household.
Yeah. And again, like you say, I guess it's a learned behavior. Like if I just kind of come down and let you come up, maybe you'll stop. And you see that a lot in children. Maybe if I do the dishes, mommy, daddy won't hit mommy. Maybe if I do what I'm supposed to do, daddy won't hit mommy. Then you see children that are taking on adult responsibilities and growing up a lot faster than what they need to
Yeah.
because of the situations that they're raised in.
Yeah. You're supposed to be a kid. Mess up those dishes,
Right,
right?
right, 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 right. Absolutely. Even with I have a 2-year-old. With my son, um, I I try all the like I have to. It's a level of patience you have to have with kids, and I have to extend that to him because he's 2. I can't expect a 16-year-old from a 2-year-old. I
Right.
can't. And even in abusive homes, you'll have that. Like you'll have children that are, oh well, if I mess this up, daddy's gonna beat me or mommy's gonna beat me, or I may get punished for this. Am I gonna eat tonight if I make a bad grade? And it's goes from like a minor scale to a major, like a large scale of the abuse. And they get very creative with that abuse. I'm pretty sure, as you can imagine, they get very creative.
Oh yeah.
And so if you think what they do to an adult, sometimes they magnify that to a child.
Yeah. Which
Yeah,
is it's awful.
absolutely.
It's absolutely awful. Um, and that is a whole other rabbit hole we could go down.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
um, but the manipulation side of it, I mean, we all know that any type of abuse, there's some type of manipulation, coercion, like that kind of stuff. You'll ruin the child's lives if you'll take them away. You're turning them against me, you're the devil. Like any and all language is thrown out for that kind of
Right.
thing.
Hmm.
um on the legal side of it, and we're not attorneys here, this is just from experience, right? What do you see on just the legal aspect of making sure a child stays in a safe environment and gets an education? Now, whether that is the escape in doing homeschooling, escape in going to a different school, what have you seen in your experience coming from the legal aspect of that?
Um, from the legal aspect, it really depends on if the mom or dad or the parent that's being abused has a restraining order or protective
Okay.
order. Without that restraining order or protective order, um, the other parent, as long as they have been identified and say this is the child and we have taken a paternity test, they have rights to the child, have
Okay.
rights to see the child. So if it's a situation of where um, they are not, they're let's say they're not married,
Yeah.
no paternity has been established. So with that, if the abuser, mom or dad, is they don't know like their rights, they can just be like, all right, whatever, we'll let this go. And that's a situation where the mom or dad can pull the child out and they have sole custody. They're the primary parent.
Mm-hmm.
So they can pull the child out and I can switch my child to homeschool if I
Wherever.
want, or wherever I want to do, I can do that. However, if paternity has been established and that parent has rights, it's limited to what they can do. And again, we're not really
Yeah.
lawyers, so
So, I mean, that just
yeah.
brings the importance of documentation,
Mhm.
calling in a expert, right? An advocate, calling like a CASA or Spring or, Mary Martha House, like, any of these places,
Mhm.
Hope Villages, like all of these places that have advocates that can go with you and can help document and help
Mhm.
take the scariness out of getting an injunction or a restraining order in place.
Yeah,
So there is that protection. So
absolutely.
that is so important.
Yeah, and even in the courthouse, a lot of people don't know there are court advocates that will be assigned to you. That's what I did. I didn't have to go to court.
Okay.
I didn't have to go downtown to fill out any forms or anything. All I had to do was call once the very last situation happened. Actually, the police got involved and the court got involved and the state basically. So they assigned a court advocate to me. I would talk to her. She represented me in court. I didn't have to go. She was the one that did my restraining order. I didn't have to, pretty much I didn't have to do anything but just tell my statement. And there were so many resources available when one of the main things they asked was, do you have children? Do you all have children together? You know, um, we need to know this specifically
Yeah.
because they'll let you know what you need to do.
Yeah, man. So let's get into the education side of it and your role in the education side of kids in general, right? The programs that you have put together, because I mean, you and I could talk all night.
Oh, oh yeah, absolutely.
um, and I don't want to monopolize your time, but I want to make sure to touch base on kind of the importance of what you're doing and how that can also be a great resource for someone in a domestic violence situation.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, one of the main things that I do is I try to make education affordable for families. So, specifically, if a child is, let's say, a family has to pull their child out, they have to leave town for whatever reason, or leave for instance, we just had the hurricane.
Hmm.
Even in those situations, I pulled my child out of school for a couple of weeks and they fell behind in math. I need someone to work with my child. However, I really can't afford it specifically. Um, and I don't know what resources I have. So my job is to be able to provide those resources. And even if there are resources that I may not know about, I will specifically um, try to find out and become a provider for it, or you can qualify for my Visionary Scholars initiative. And that is specifically, I do a lot of fundraisers, but that's specifically for the families and children that cannot afford the tutoring, college readiness services, mentoring service, whatever service that they may need. That covers that. So that pays for that child for the year. And as long as that family still qualifies, they can keep going for each year as a child is in school.
So that's amazing. So someone in a situation,
Mhm.
right? A domestic violence situation, um, homelessness situation, any kind of situation. I mean, we're talking about domestic violence, but there are lots of situations that can land someone to reach out for your services,
Mhm.
and the extra help in that through that you can provide the educational stability. So if you're doing this at home or doing this on the road or doing this from a family member's house,
Mhm.
that you're providing resources to these
Mhm.
people, man, woman, aunt, uncle, it doesn't matter, that you're able to provide the resource to be able to keep this child on track.
Right.
So that stability at least is one thing that can be controlled in an uncontrollable environment.
Right. Right. And that's basically what I do. I'm fortunate I don't just work with children. I work with adults as well. So if I have a family, a mom that's, hey, I'm escaping or whatever situation that they may be in, but I really want to go back to school. I want to further my education because I want to be able to provide for my family and help them become more stable. I help them as
I
well.
love that.
Let's yeah, let's find whatever path works. If you need to get your GED, if you didn't finish high school, well, let's start there. If you did finish high school, or let's say you did go to college, you have some college credits, but hey, I can't afford it out of pocket. There's scholarships. Let's find what resources will work for you.
Yeah. And pool whatever like classes they did take in college and maybe put that towards an associate's
Right.
degree
Absolutely.
or a skill like a trade type situation that gets them earning money faster, which that's amazing.
Absolutely. And now we live in a world where technology is huge. So there are plenty ways you can make money. There are plenty ways you can get your education or find the resources. TikTok alone has helped me find a lot of scholarships for a lot of my students.
Oh, that's
Um, so even different platforms, Instagram as well. We use these social media platforms for our good, use it. This is a
yeah.
resource, so use it for your good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, so we talked about the money side of it where financial can be like a huge thing. Um, you know, do you recommend or do you have access to if someone says, I'm in a money or a custody battle, especially in abusive situations, 99% of abuse situations also deal with financial abuse.
Hmm.
So do you point out different resources for legal aid, financial aid, any of that kind of stuff above and beyond just the educational side? Do you ever provide that stuff to families?
I personally, if a family really needs it, then yes. But what I've done is partnered with different organizations such as Hope for Her
Yep.
that have a plethora of other resources. So if I'm not able to find anything or if I just don't know it, hey, my organization I've partnered with, they have a plethora of resources. Let's
Yeah.
contact them. Let's make an appointment. I'll go with you. Let's just get you your name to them and let them know what you're needing, and they will be able to take it from there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, so let's go into kind of like final thoughts. I know we've talked about like different resources, you being one of them for, being able to escape. And, Ignite Her, we try to put on our site a resource page where people can like find shelters and, different things like that. But there's also the National Domestic Violence Hotline.
Hmm.
I never knew that existed when I was getting out of my
Yeah.
situation, but I'm learning real quick because I'm giving that out to a lot of people. Um, and just know, like, for anyone that is trapped or feels trapped in this type of scenario, that protecting your child's future sometimes means you taking the hard step first.
Yeah.
And it's not easy, and you're not alone. And the happiness of your child is paramount
Yeah.
to the short-term discomfort,
Absolutely.
you know?
Absolutely. Especially in that, me as a mom, looking at my son, I don't just look at my son as my son. He is going to be someone's father. He's going to be someone's husband. He's going to be someone's, if I have more children down the line, someone's brother. He's going to be someone's
Yeah,
employee, employer. So, student, business partner. I want to make sure that I am putting my child in a healthy environment so that I may not be able to teach him everything, but the things that I can teach him, I will. And again, provide that healthy, loving environment for him so that once he gets older, he can pass what he's learned on to his children or his coworkers, his employees specifically, friends, colleagues, whatever. I just look at it like that. And I think
yeah,
that does help
Uh-oh, I lost your. Oh, there we go. Okay.
But I think that helps specifically when you're looking in that situation. I know
Yeah,
for me, I didn't have children at the time, so but I did want children, you know? So I'm like,
yeah,
if I sit here and this is it for me, I
yeah,
won't be able to ever have children, the goals, the things that I want to do, I'm not going to be able to achieve them. So,
yeah. And what
I
was your aha moment to say, okay, this is enough, I'm out?
I, I left Connecticut for the holidays for Thanksgiving. And I left the holidays for Thanksgiving and I was on the he called me and he was calling me out my name, saying all these mean and bad things to me, and it just clicked in my head. You're in a completely different state and you don't have to go back.
Oh,
So
yeah.
in that moment, I just decided I'm not going back. And I
Yeah,
literally just that was it. I was like, I'm not going
that's
back.
amazing.
Yeah.
So you were already in a safe place.
Hmm.
Your brain and your heart disconnected because you know they tug at the heartstrings,
Yeah.
right? So your brain has to take over.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, and your brain told you, okay, you're done. And
Yep.
then your
Hmm.
heart listened. So that's
Absolutely.
amazing.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And again, it's just about following what's going to be best for you, your children, your family, and going from there.
Yeah.
That's my
Are there
story.
any other book, and I always like to ask about books. Is there any book or books that helped you um, while you were in the domestic violence situation or after you've escaped that, that kind of helped calm your brain from all of the craziness?
I wouldn't say any books because I wasn't reading. That's my son in the background. That's him.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah. But I wouldn't say it was books that helped me. It was more so my therapist.
Okay.
I was very open and honest with my therapist. My it was actually I had my therapist prior to me being in that situation, and then once I got into that situation, I stopped going to him, and I would check in every once in a while. And then when I finally got out of that situation and I went back to my therapist, me and my therapist had a conversation, and he stated, "Why didn't you feel safe enough to tell me?" And I think that's what really helped me. And that was the number one indicator that I saw. I was like, I don't feel safe.
So did you not feel safe or did you feel shame and embarrassment?
I would say both.
Yeah.
I would say both. I honestly would say both. I didn't even tell my family.
Yeah.
My sister found out when I was in the hospital,
Mm.
and I FaceTime her with a cast, a wrap on my arm. I had two broken fingers and a broken wrist. And
Oh my
that's
goodness.
how she found out. And I didn't tell my parents, but she told my parents because she was like, look at you. This is serious, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and they didn't really know. They didn't really know. And it was out of fear because there were threats being made. It was literally out of fear. And I'm like, okay, I if I tell, what's going to happen to my family, you know?
Yeah.
And it was it was a very shameful because I didn't come from that type of lifestyle. I was raised in a two-parent household. My dad is a pastor.
Yeah.
Uh, that white picket fence family,
Yep.
that's my family. So it was like, what are you doing? You know, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed. I was, and I was scared, and I was relieved though when it first came out. When everyone found out, and I was able to get away, I was relieved. I was like, I don't have to carry this secret anymore.
Yeah. That secret gets really
Hmm.
heavy, right? And we
Oh
internalize
yeah.
it. So what would you say, just from your experience, what would you advise women to do? Number one, if they're in a situation,
Hmm.
what would you say to them if they were currently in a situation and trying to figure out a way to get out? And then the second part of that question is if you know someone, so if you're not in the situation, but you know someone that's in a situation,
Hmm.
how would you tell them to help their friend or family member?
So the number one thing I would say, um, number one question I would ask is if I was talking to someone that is in that situation, they're saying, "Hey, I want to get out." Do you really want to get out? Because there is not going to be you're not going to be ready to really leave until you're ready to really leave.
Yeah.
Because if you leave before you're ready, you're going to go back. You're going to keep going back. So,
Yep.
are you ready to really leave? And that is when I can give you the advice. I can, hey, try it this way. I didn't try it this way, and it was a little bit rough. Um, that's really the main place I would start is really, hey, are you really ready to leave?
Yeah.
And
And then how would you address the friend or family member that is seeing this happen, but doesn't know how to approach or help their loved one?
yeah, and I think in that situation, I would advise the family or family member or friend to be as supportive as they can, but they also have to be careful too. So, you have to kind of put up a boundary, but be as supportive as you can. I remember when I was in my situation, my best friend, me and her were best friends for like 5 years. That was my best friend. And he threatened her. And she had to make the conscious decision to say, hey, Jakira, I love you, but he threatened me, and that's putting my life at risk.
Yeah.
We're going to have to part ways now.
That was very, very bold of him
Hmm.
to do that.
Yeah,
He didn't just like cut her off and say something nasty. He actually threatened
yeah,
her, which that, yeah,
yeah. It and it was pretty. Again, it was very bold, and it was pretty scary. And at the time, I didn't understand from her perspective until I was in a situation where I was in her shoes, and my friend was going through something similar to what I was going through.
yeah,
And I love you. You are my closest friend. I'm always going to love you. That door, I'm not going to say it's open because of safety reasons. I'm going to leave it cracked
yeah,
or I'm going to lock it, but there's a code on it and you know the code because you're my best friend.
yeah,
But when you're ready to leave or if you ever need me, please let me know. But because I value my safety as well.
yeah,
And in that moment, again, I can only be as supportive as I can. So, hey, my friend, I love you. I'm here for you. If it escalates to that point where I have to back up and take my distance, then I will. But in the backgrounds, I'm always there.
yeah.
If I see something on social media that doesn't look right, I'm gonna call the police. Just
You're
I'm
taking
taking out.
note.
Oh yeah,
Yep. You're
yeah.
keeping an eye and creating that safe space. And I think that's half the battle for loved ones is if you see something that's off, document it because they're probably not documenting it and there needs to be some kind of paper trail, right? What if that
Oh,
the abused cracks and unalives that abuser, right?
right.
Or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
The abuser has a momentary, like, you know, loses his mind or her mind and
Yep.
they unalive the abused.
Mm-hmm.
Like there has to be a history drawn that can get easily get in the hands of the police so they know that this still wasn't like a freak accident, right? And it wasn't like it wasn't a suicide. It wasn't like what do they call it? A hidden suicide, hidden
Right.
they call them hidden homicides.
Mm-hmm.
Like you want to make sure it doesn't fall into that category.
Oh
So
yeah,
there is someone that, is absolutely held accountable.
absolutely. And I think in my case, one of the things that did help me is that every single time a situation happened, I called the police. Now you have to again, every state is different because, for instance, Georgia, if there's a domestic violence situation and you call the police, they will arrest both of you. And of course, we know that abusers can be
Oh
manipulative,
yeah.
so it can cause issues there. And basically discredit you. So
Yeah.
um, those are things that you have to look out for. Those are things that you have to, again, just pay attention to and be mindful of in those situations, and knowing specifically the laws and how am I protected in the different states, and how are my children protected as well.
Yeah. And knowing some of those things, because laws are changing, right? They're getting
Oh,
updated. There's new things that are coming to light, from California on over. It seems to be working from West Coast to East Coast on laws changing. Um, but absolutely being, especially if someone that you love is in this situation, if you're the abused, you probably can't look this stuff up.
mhm.
But friends and family of the abused absolutely can
Absolutely.
take notice and look it up, and be ready for when you make the call of, okay, I'm out. This is dangerous. This is life threatening. X, Y, and Z happened.
Yep.
But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, amazing. Any parting words? Tell everyone how they can find you.
Absolutely. So you can either find me on Instagram. The pan handle is AchieveNow edu__, or you can find me on Facebook. It's AchieveNow Educational Services. I'd be happy to help any way I can. I'm here. I'm a resource.
That's amazing. And of course, Jakira Leonard. And this is Tiffany with IgniteHer. And we have absolutely enjoyed our discussion. I have absolutely enjoyed my time speaking with you, and um, and look forward to doing more stuff with you in the future.
Absolutely. I'm super excited. I'm super excited. Thank you so much, Tiffany.
Yay! Thank you. Have a great evening.
Yes, you
Thank
too.
you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.